All
Plus,
right.
it really looked fake too. Like looking at it, to me, it did.
All right. To share your handout, just go to the
Mhm.
bottom and click share screen, and then you should be able to pull it up. Click the window to share.
Okay, what? Righty. My first category is the director. The Exorcist was directed.
You, I think your sound went out, Regan. Can anyone hear?
I can't.
What was it?
Right when you started talking, your sound went out. So
Oh, okay. The Exorcist was directed by William Friedkin in 1973. Friedkin is an American film and television director. He is widely known for his hand in The French Connection, which won 5 Academy Awards. He is also famous for The Exorcist, which earned him a nomination for the Academy Award for Best Director. Did y'all hear that?
mm-hmm.
Okay. There was a lot of awards won in this movie, so I made a category for it. It's not, I mean, it's different the actors that won for their role in the film. William Blatty won Academy Award for Best Writing Adapted Screenplay. Linda Blair, she won Golden Globe Award for Best Supporting Actress in Motion Picture. William Blatty won Golden Globe Award for Best Motion Picture Drama. Chris Newman and Robert Cudson won Academy Award for Best Sound Mixing. William Friedkin won Golden Globe Award for Best Director Motion Picture, and William Blatty Golden Globe Award for Best Screenplay Motion Picture. The actors in this film, I'll start with the main character, Reagan. She was played by Linda Blair, and Linda Blair received intense criticism for her role in the movie. She went into a downward spiral shortly after and was reported having several mental breakdowns. She became addicted to drugs and ultimately took a plea deal for 3 years of probation after she was charged with intent to distribute and possession. She has since turned her life around and developed her career as an actor and wrote a book about her struggle. My video talks a little bit about her life and her role in the film. Um, Chris Mcneill, she played the mother in the film. She was played by Ellen Burston. Burston is known for playing roles of difficult women. She has won multiple awards, including an Oscar, an Emmy, and a Tony, which is known as the Triple Crown of Acting. Damien Carraz or Kakaraz, I can't say his last name. He was the father and also psychiatrist in the film, played by Jason Miller. Jason Miller is an actor and a playwright. He won a Tony for his play The Championship Season, and he also passed away in April of 2001. Lancaster.
Regan, the sound faded right when you started talking about Father
And
Merrin.
he, huh?
So the sound cut off again right when you started talking about Father Merrin.
Oh, sorry, my internet's bad. I said he was played by Max Fonsetto. Max was a Swedish French actor. He had a 70-year career in European and American cinema, and he appeared in over 150 films. Father Dyer, played by William O'Malley, he also was the technical director of the film. And Lieutenant William Kinderman was the detective, and he was played by Lee Jacob. Can y'all still hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
We can't hear you now if you're talking.
But you had talked about in one of the discussion questions. It was so interesting to me how he had glimpsed the demon before he.
You're cutting out again, Regan. Technical difficulties today.
like I was talking about earlier with throwing up. Into himself and like sacrificing himself. The theme of this movie is death, life after death, and how religion and supernatural plays into that, and where we go after death. You know, everything surrounding that question. There's also some conspiracy theories with this film. I don't know if anybody's ever heard. Multiple things happened during the set. The film was delayed for 6 weeks during the shoot because the set had an unexplained fire that burnt down everything on scene except for Reagan's room. Ellen Burston, which played the mother of the film, sustained a permanent spine injury during her scene of when Reagan slapped her and you heard her scream. That was her actually screaming because she had her harness malfunction on set. And she has a permanent spine injury in her tailbone. And 2 actors, Vasilik Milarios or something. That was, I don't know how to say that name. That was Damon's mother, though. She played Damon's mother. And Jack McGrowan, which was Burke, the family friend who was an alcoholic. They were both scripted to die in the film, and they actually died in real life during the post-production of the movie, which means while the movie was being edited, they actually died. Before the release of the film, 7 crew members conspiracy theory. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, you were cutting in and out a little bit, but we got most of it.
Oh, I hate that.
That's all right. It happens. That won't affect your grade or anything. You can't help that.
Okay. I said, did you hear me read all about the conspiracy theory?
We did get most of that, yeah.
Okay. I wanted to ask y'all what you thought about it.
I knew it was either this movie or the Poltergeist that kind of had that reputation of like everybody that worked on it was basically haunted or just bad things happen to them all the time. I think the Poltergeist has that same type of vibe because they had actual skeletons in one of the scenes.
Uh-huh. Yep. And the scene where Ellen Burston, which was the mother of Reagan, I thought that was crazy. When I got to researching this to do my project, I didn't even know that that scene had been used. That her scream when she had screamed when she got slapped in the face, that was her actually screaming in pain because she had just sustained an injury in her spine. I thought that was wild.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that either. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine.
I mean, I was just going to say, I've always heard about the conspiracy theories, you know, like people falling on set and getting injured and, you know, someone fell off a ladder or something like that. But I just thought that was, you know, more, it seems like the hype was more on that than it was the movie back in my day.
Yeah. And also about the preacher's dream, I haven't got to watch The Exorcist 2. It goes all the way up to 3, I think. I don't know if the movie went on to explain, but the preacher, Damien, his dream about the demon before he had even met Reagan, I thought that was interesting. I wondered like what that would mean, what that meant, what maybe y'all thought that meant.
It definitely asks a lot of questions, and I have answers to none of it. which is why I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, me too. I love this movie. I've always have. Obviously, her name is the same. So
You still want me to play that video for you? We can do that really quick if you like. Oops. There we go. I'll play the video that Reagan wanted me to share really quick.
yes, I don't know if you heard me say that, but I did say that.
Since the beginning of cinema, there have been horror films. Any great horror flick will
Hold
have
on
a
one
last.
second. How long in the video do you want me to show?
3 minutes and 35 seconds. The rest of the movie talks about what I already summed up about the lead actor and her life. It goes on to go more in depth in it.
So from 0 to 3 minutes and 35 seconds?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Hold on 1 sec. Okay.
Almost since the beginning of cinema, there have been horror films. Any great horror flick will have a lasting impression, and few have impacted audiences more than the 1973 classic, The Exorcist. 45 years on, Linda Blair looks back at becoming the world's most famous teen after the film's release, and she let me in on a few secrets in this exclusive interview. It's the film that heralded the modern era of horror films.
Keep away! The sour is mine.
In his search for a teenager capable of possessing the part of Regan, director William Friedkin started looking at adult actors. When 12-year-old Linda Blair's management wouldn't put her up for the role, her mother rocked up to Friedkin's office with her daughter unannounced. But there were concerns what impact the filming would have on the young actor.
Billy Friedkin made sure that I was okay before we started filming, before they even hired me. It was almost 3 months at least where he put me through a lot of just checking me out every week, and we would rehearse and we would do this. He was making sure that I was stable.
Friedkin had a reputation as a perfectionist, and it showed on set.
No, it was all physical. It was all directed. Everything was instrumental. There was nothing that was, do you understand we're talking about the devil? Every angle, everything I do, every time I move, like I can look at you and I can see, well, if you cock your head this way or that way, how the lighting changes.
Every morning, Linda endured 2 grueling hours in the makeup chair.
As a teenager, it was torture. You know, to have all of the monster makeup and the glue. People forget that glue was nasty. That hurt my face. It did hurt.
The glue?
It burned my face, yeah.
And what was the actual vomit?
Well, that's just pea soup.
So that wasn't so bad. Can you still eat pea soup?
I didn't like it.
Can you eat pea soup?
I love pea soup, but it has to be vegan.
Production on the film was riddled with problems, which led some to believe it was cursed. But nothing would stop audiences queuing up for hours to be almost scared to death when the film opened on Boxing Day, 1973.
Fantastic movie.
It's really gross.
It was really terrific.
I want to see if it's going to make me throw up.
People had so many varied reactions to the film when it came out. Visceral reactions in a lot of ways.
Oh, yes, I do know.
Yeah, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. It divided the critics. Some hailed it as a masterpiece, while others called it sickening, gruesome, and hateful. There were calls for it to be banned, and Linda received death threats saying she was glorifying Satan.
The people most susceptible to being profoundly upset by the film are those who went in believing in the devil.
Were you shielded from any of the criticism, from any of the horrible things that were said about you?
No.
You weren't. So how on earth did you cope with that?
My mother.
Right.
What
did she do?
Amazing.
I guess the devil made me say it.
Oh.
You're pursued. They're in the bushes. They're chasing you down the street. You have no privacy. You don't know who you are. I was at public school, and then basically we had to sort of finish everything off pretty quickly. And so I was a work machine. They, movie after movie, changed primetime television with TV movies. I worked with some of the greatest actors, Charlton Heston's and Gloria Swanson's and all these people. So that I hold these memories sacred. It was very odd being me.
All right, yeah, that was some interesting stuff.
Yeah, I thought it went well with explaining. I thought it went well with my presentation. So I was like, well, I'd like to put this in here with it.
Bill, I'll start class off today with you. I'm curious if you remember when this movie came out and the audience reception and all that.
Yes, I do remember it. I didn't watch it. I've never been a horror film person, but I must clarify that because I really like this movie. I am intrigued by the spirit world anyway. But I noticed as time has went on from the days that this came out, I believe it was 1983. Is that correct?
73.
73. So that would have been a year after that I graduated. So I'm still a young person, but it was just like the infomercial said, people were lining up to sit and it was the big talk of the time. Now, as time has went on and we've watched other movies, scary movies, sci-fi movies, our minds, I believe, even television today, our minds are programmed and perhaps even calloused to be able to accept things better now than people did many years ago. I'll remind the group that in the old movie or old TV show, Dick Van Dyke, that his wife was the first person to ever wear pants on film. So that's where we've evolved to. Of course, now we see people in commercials that have very little clothing on. So the same, I think it is with horror movies, death. Years ago, the Westerns, somebody would get shot, but you never saw any blood, that type thing. We saw in many of our films that we've watched, as the Alien Ness and His Boys, the Untouchables, we saw some gory things. We've gotten used to that. We can handle that better than we did in 1973. No wonder people threw up. There's an old cliche, and I've even used this in teaching Sunday school classes. We're getting used to the dark. I would go in one of those classes and I would turn the lights completely out in the classroom. And as we sat there, we became able to see in the darkness practically. So now I think this movie for 1973 was a real eye-opener and probably a gateway to much more gory things. So yeah, I can understand why the people would throw up and be sick and that kind of thing. The audience may not have been ready for it. It would be now, but not then. I will say one more thing, and then I'll be quiet while I'm on, is I think that if we would see this movie today, the makeup and the scenes would be a lot more realistic than they were in 1973. So even in those things, we've come a long way to be able to make these scenes really seem real to us. I thought it had a little bit of a fake image to it, but the movie, I really enjoyed the movie. I was really intrigued by it.
I remember the first time I seen the girl's face, just because everybody's seen at least a few seconds from The Exorcist, just whether it's in passing or whatever, or at least I have. I've always seen the girl's face, and I would see her at the beginning, and I would be like, it does not look like the same person at all. Like, I personally didn't think it at all, but for some reason, watching it and like seeing the scars gradually get there and more. Like by the time we got to the end of the movie, like I felt like that was actually the real girl that was getting slits in her face and different stuff like that. So I went in with the thought of this isn't going to look as good, but I'm going to at least appreciate the fact that it's not CGI. To, nah, this is actually really good. I really liked it.
Yeah, I should qualify this a little bit by talking about horror films before this. Okay. You know, the 1930s, 1940s, 50s, you know, that was the era of the Universal monster movies. So you had all these different adaptations of Frankenstein and Dracula and the Wolf Man, right? You had other classics like Creature of the Black Lagoon or The Thing from Another World, which was the 50s version of the movie we're watching Thursday. But horror cinema changed radically in 1960 with Psycho. Right? Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho was a major change from more of monsters to more of a realistic type of horror. You know, the true horror is within people, right? That's kind of what Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho introduced us to. And again, we're in 1973 now, so we're in this kind of, you guys know from the class already, we're in this post-Vietnam era of filmmaking, right? You know, you guys know that things got a little more extreme in the 70s with filmmaking, as Bill said, right? So, yeah.
Too, also, in early on in the 60s, or mid 60s, late 60s, there were a couple movies that come out, and there was a sequel to one. It was Black Sunday and The House on the Haunted Hill. These were Vincent Price movies, and they had to do with like ghostly things, but the screen has evolved from, and even society today, from ghostly things to demon possession. I think that's something that we need to think about and address, perhaps, because, we read throughout the manuscripts of old religion books, the Bible, history. We see demon possession in Africa and so on and so forth. Well, now, instead of just being a scary, what we would call a scary movie in the 60s and 70s, suddenly we are touched with this dynamic pattern of how real it is. And now in the 80s or in the 90s and the 2000s, we've got a lot of drug addiction. We see people acting as though they may be possessed or whatever. But I think it's brought a new awareness to the inner part of a person.
To speak on that, 3 of the scariest movies I've watched in the past, that's been made in the past decade, is The Witch, Insidious, and Sinister. And Sinister is the only one that I'm not 100% positive has a demon in it. The boogeyman in Sinister might be a demon, but Insidious is about demon possession, and so is The Witch. So just to even further, whatever you validate what you were talking about.
Yeah, there's actually a study done, a scientific study that asked like, what's the most scary film ever? And a lot of those, The Exorcist was on there, but a lot of the ones you just mentioned, Corey, were also on there. You know, they did the study by analyzing people's heart rates through the movie, right? So no secret that a lot of the movies with more jump scares and stuff, right, got the heart pumping a little bit more, Right. So yeah, there's lots of ways we can go with this conversation. We can go the good versus evil. We can break down the characters. Um, the religion aspect. As Bill's kind of taking us down the religion aspect road. Let's start with that. I'll just ask you guys frankly, like, have you guys seen this before? Like, if you are a religious bend, right? Did the movie surprise you in any way? This is a very orthodox Christian film, right? Whenever we really break down these characters, because at its heart, this movie is about Father Karras's redemption, right? So you can't really get a more Christian movie than The Exorcist.
That's
right?
true.
Right.
That is really true. And I saw it from that perspective. Firstly, I had to ask the question as I was watching the movie because I had never seen it before. I was intrigued totally by it. Wasn't turned off by it at all. The spirit world is something that I think is very real. I think that's we could ask ourselves, and some of us might be afraid to answer, but do we believe there's demons today? That's a question that's out there, even in the religious circles. We know, according to New Testament scripture, that Jesus came in contact with demons in many times. So, it's a question maybe we could ask today: are there demons, or are they just bad things that happen? Maybe she just had a brain problem. They didn't find it.
Right. That's a question that the movie poses for sure. Right. One of Reagan's questions on her prompt was, do you think that the Catholic Church was adequately represented in the film? Interestingly enough, you guys probably know Catholics are really the only mainline denomination of Christianity that does exorcisms, and they're very rare, right? So very rare, because they do go through all these rigorous steps to try to prove whether science is involved or not. But Baptists and Protestants, right? All Protestants don't do exorcisms.
Mm-hmm.
This is a purely Catholic thing, right? So a lesson in what's the difference between Catholics and Protestants and all that. We don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, right? But I don't know. What did you guys think of? To ask Regan's question, what did you guys think of that, of the way that the church was painted in the film?
I think it was pretty accurate. I knew that, a lot of times we think about having exorcisms, and we know that they're far and few between, and there are rules and regulations to get approval to even consider doing an exorcism. So that was pretty accurate, I thought. Now, I don't know the ins and outs of the Catholic faith. I know some, but probably just enough to be dangerous, and certainly wouldn't want to misrepresent the Catholic faith. But they stand for a lot of things that in this day and time that is, in the world of being controversial. I think it was strong. I think even the maybe too the father having problems. He's having major difficulty. He's got some weak faith going on here. He's kind of like our character in The Grapes of Wrath. He's kind of lost the spirit to some degree. So with that said, I've been in church services all my life, after I was 23, and I've never seen any kind of thing that like an exorcism. I have read about them. They intrigue me. But I thought her question was a great one. Do you think the Catholic Church was represented accurately in this film? I think for the general public, yes. As much as we know about the inner lines of the faith.
Other thoughts on this question about the Catholic Church and its representation? I don't know if you guys noticed, but one of the major things with Catholics versus Protestants is just the imagery even within the church. If you guys notice, Catholic churches are much more like, for instance, the crucifix, right? If you look at a cross in mainline Protestantism, it's just a cross. The Catholics put the actual figure of Christ on the cross. That's crucifix. So all of his decorations in the church, like one of the scenes was when something desecrated the statue of the Virgin Mary in the film. Right, that illustrated the beginning of this possession. So the Catholic Church, if nothing else, gives us more Christian imagery, right? Just because of Protestants have never been about like the pomp and ceremony of church, right? They're more about getting straight to the point, right? Whereas Catholics are much more, they like to go through the ceremonies a lot more, if that makes sense. I guess where I'm going with that is you see a lot of that in this film, right? You see these elaborate churches and all that.
I had the opportunity when I was a young man to visit a former Catholic nun, and she was an amazing woman. And when she knew where I stood, she knew everything about how I worshiped. She knew my doctrine. She knew it in and out. I didn't know so much about her. She was much older than I, but we became really great friends. And she explained a lot of these things to me that would have been new to me. The symbolisms that they use. Listen, it would take a strong, strong faith to go into that room and deal with a demon and that's why I think that they got the second father in as someone who had some experience dealing with demons. It's something that certainly no one would want to just tangle with, but the movie itself portrays a real spiritual or dynamic foundation, which I think makes it a classic. I think it's a classic movie.
I love the fact that Father Baron, what's his name?
Harris.
I love the fact that Father Karras, the demon is like talking back to him in his mom's voice. And that's one of those things where it's like, it's not scary in the movie, but the thought of it is scary. Like the thought of like a loved one coming back and maybe you wronged them before, and that person's voice coming out from a demon, like that's a very scary, like I said, it's just the thought of it is so scary, and it forces him out, but he has to make the choice to go back into the room to try to deal with her. And then towards the end of the movie, he just like, he goes from not being the most faithful person to just saying, screw it, take me, and I'll just deal with this thing myself, even if I have to kill myself in the process.
Mhm.
I know that was a little off topic.
Yeah, and I thought that, oh, but I was gonna expand on that just a little bit. I thought that his character, I even mentioned this on your thread, Corey, that in the beginning, like he was just someone that I had my eye on throughout the movie. And I couldn't really kind of place how I felt about him in the beginning. But then the more that the movie kept going on, the more respect that I had for this man. And when he realized that this child had her whole life to live, he had lost his mother and didn't really have anybody, and was willing to sacrifice himself for her so that she could live a good life. I thought that was, very amazing, and said something about his character. So he really impressed me. Now, in the beginning, I was like thinking he was kind of sketchy, but as the movie went on, he really impressed me. I thought he was a great character in the movie.
I think it also showed his spiritual advancement. I think that he went from being kind of weak in the faith as he was around Father Marin. His faith began to grow, even though he was afraid from time to time, because he brings scripture alive, because it's like as though he gave his life for this little girl. And Jesus is quoted, not in the movie, but in scripture, says, no greater love has any man than he's laid down his life for his brother. So he practically accepted that, laid his life down, no matter what the consequence. So I think we're seeing a little bit of, a little bit of grace involved in this whole scenario of demon possession. And I also love the dialogue between the two fathers. Remember when Father Marin made the statement, don't believe him, talking about the demon, he's a liar. And we know that's what scripture says, that he's a liar and the father of it. So I believe you can watch it again and really absorb a whole lot more about what's going on.
Right.
And going back, go ahead, Regan.
Sorry, I was going to say, not to kind of get off of the subject of the film, but The Cuckoo's Nest, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, was made in 1975, and this one was made 2 years earlier. What did y'all think of the mental ward the mom was in compared to the mental ward in The Cuckoo's Nest? Because it was a lot of similarities, but a lot different at the same time. And plus, the doctor, I didn't mention it, but the really ironic that the doctor was telling Chris, the mom, about her daughter and the results, medical results, as he's lighting up a cigarette talking to her. Like, that was really ironic. I didn't know if y'all, kind of caught on with that. I just wanted to bring it up.
I made a joke while we were watching the movie, and I said, I miss the days when you could smoke in the hospital and the doctor's office, because you actually could. I mean, you guys don't know about this, but you could actually smoke anywhere, and everybody smoked. It was just crazy. But I think that in Cuckoo's Nest, at least they showed a little life in the psych ward, whereas there was just no life. And it's as he was walking in, the people trying to grab him, I felt like I was just waiting on one of them to beg him to take him out of there, because they knew they were getting mistreated. And that scene really affected me, because it's so sad. I know that kind of stuff actually happened, and I just think that's so pitiful. And today we accept mental illness and mental health issues and treat them, and then those people were shunned and just mistreated and tortured, and they were already tortured in their minds enough. And I would hate to have seen that little girl have to stay there for any length of time, because it looked like complete death. They were just existing. That's all they were doing.
I thought the same thing. Like as soon as it showed us, I was like, oh, it's like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And it was just like Crystal said, it was blander. There didn't have any life in it whatsoever. As soon as somebody came in who looked like a priest, they started saying, Father, please get me out of here. It honestly, if anything, it showed what the actual feeling of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was trying to portray underneath the funny characters, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, it reminded me of the second floor on One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, right? The one where they do the little lobotomies and you see the patients just kind of zoned out, no sense of self, right? That's very much what that scene reminds me of from Cuckoo's Nest. That was a great question. I hadn't thought of the connection between the two films, but yeah, very good question. What did you guys think of like all the medical experiments that Reagan has to go through in the film? So like a good hour of this film was her going through all these medical experiments, right? So of course, I'm sure that our medical technology has advanced since then, right? With all these big machines and brain scans and all this type of stuff. What did you guys think of those scenes in the movie? Why do you think that they went through all that exhaustive detail even and showing them?
I thought
I
they
think
were very. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, it's okay.
No, go ahead, baby. I mean, I just think that maybe they were trying to show that they were trying to exhaust every avenue. They didn't want to think that she was demon possessed. They wanted to show that they literally tested her for everything in every manner, and even the extent of the testing, that it wasn't just, okay, we'll take some blood, or okay, we'll listen to her heart. It was extensive, horrific, painful tests that she had to go through. Man, I remember personally, I had seizures for a while, and I had to go through this one test where they would put you into a seizure and to see what your brain was doing and things like that. And one of those tests reminded me of that she was doing. And I remember how horrible it was. I mean, like, that nurse kept patting my head and saying, it's okay, honey, I'm here. Like, I thought she was going to cry with me, but I can't imagine having to go through that as a child. And she was going through some pretty horrific testing. And I mean, personally, I think that it was because they were just trying to show the extent of how they were testing her to prove that, there's nothing wrong with her. So there couldn't be a second guessing or question about it.
I was going to say I cringed. I was eating during one of the film when they put in her neck the syringe. I put my food away.
Yeah.
And I said I would, if I was back in that time, they had to test me like that, I would die. I would not go to the doctor ever.
The doctors never at any time that I can remember mentioned anything about a demon or anything spiritual. I think the mother was totally convinced that there was a demon within her daughter. The doctors did not. They never said that. They were looking for another avenue. Perhaps they were in denial. If there are demons today, if there are spiritual warfare going on, then we certainly live in a day and an age of denial. So, I mean, it's easy to push things aside that you don't understand. We did it for years in the medical field. Perhaps we do it with the spiritual realm. Perhaps people who don't believe that there are demons. Perhaps people who take the historical account of scripture and say, well, it's just a bunch of men that got together and wrote pages in a book. You know, I mean, if you really believe that, then that's fine. I mean, that's the person's prerogative to believe what they wish. But to be in denial, simply just to be in denial, something that important, I think, would be worth research, looking into. For instance, if you believe there's a God, why do you believe there's a God? Something that important, shouldn't you really think about it enough to investigate it? So I believe that these doctors were in total denial that there could be a demon. I believe that they thought it had to be something in her brain that they didn't understand. And I think if the mother would have let them, they would have ran more tests and more tests. But she was convinced she needed to get someone spiritual, because she felt like, beyond a shadow of a doubt, and she was with this girl, so she had more experience than even the doctors did about the symptoms and what took place. So I believe that denial is a possibility of these doctors, I guess is what I'm saying.
I love in this movie, I'm so conflicted because I both love the fact that they went through every extent possible to make sure that it's not physical or mental. But I also hated how they were, like, how brutal these treatments were for her. Only to know that, like, we're in a movie called The Exorcist. It's not a problem with her brain. Like, we know what the problem is at the beginning. We just can't tell the doctors, why are you sticking a needle in her neck? Please don't do that. You're traumatizing her for no reason. There's something else. And I love that it has that conflict. Like, I love in The Conjuring, for example. The whole point of The Conjuring is they make sure it's not anything else before it's a demon possession. If they hear a creak in your floorboards, they're gonna make sure that it's just something normal before they go on to the extent of its demon possession. So I really love that they were so cautious. But at the same time, like I said, it's a movie called The Exorcist. We know what the problem is.
Yeah.
So we're just sitting there forced to watch this poor girl go through all of this torture for really no reason at all.
I don't know if any of you guys saw the video I posted as a supplemental video for this. But there's actually, I would encourage you to check it out after class if you haven't. But one guy on YouTube, I really love this guy's film analysis videos. But he posited the thesis that Regan was actually sexually abused in the film, right? And that might even be like a sort of darker underbelly, even than like the explanation of possession. Like, his thesis was the film director in the film, like Burke, who gets thrown out the window, if you remember, right? He posits that something weird seems to be happening there, because why else would that guy be in her bedroom? Right. So I don't know if you guys thought about that character any while you were watching it, or thought, what's the significance of his death? Like, he's the first one to be thrown down the stairs. I don't know if I fully agree with it.
I kind of did.
Or go ahead, Crystal.
Well, I'm sorry about that. I kind of did, because whenever she was talking about it, she was said, well, why would he be in her room? He had no reason to be in her room. And I thought that there was some type of maybe some sexual assault, sexual abuse when the things that she was saying as she was demon possessed, when she was trying to push her mother's face down there, whenever she took the crucifix and was saying that about Jesus, you know, that like really disturbs me. So, I mean, I kind of picked up on that a little myself.
Right, that those behaviors might exhibit like you said, right, it's a symptom of something deeper, right? The fact that she's doing all these aggressive sexual things to herself. Any of the rest of you find merit in this argument, or do you think we might be overthinking it?
I thought the same thing as Crystal did. I questioned because the mom, they asked why he would even be in the room, and it got me thinking the same thing.
Yeah, I encourage you guys to check out his video. He talked, some of his evidence is that he talks about the scene where Reagan goes downstairs and pees in the floor. Right? He talks about how that's a common sort of thing with those types of cases. Really cool video.
Didn't he talk about also how the crucifix got upstairs?
Yeah, he did.
It was downstairs on the table. Yeah, I saw that. I thought that was pretty intriguing. I thought it was the characteristics of evil, regardless if it's a demon or if it's something within the human mind. It's still evil. Yeah, that kind of threw me off. Not threw me off after I'd watched the movie. When I watched his clip, it makes you think all kinds of things. Then opens up a lot of other doors that you have to investigate to, get a real feel for the movie. I was thinking about her mother, the torment that her mother went through during this escapade of this demon possession. Helpless is what she was, with no ability to help her daughter at all, except hope that these priests had some answer. Well, they did. It took their lives to free her from the bondage she was in.
What did you guys think of that character, the mother? Reagan said that the actress who plays her typically plays difficult women, right? Which I thought was interesting.
I did too.
She's also a very doubtful, skeptical character through the film, right? But she seems to come around, as Bill said earlier. What do you think of this performance?
I thought she done well, and I think just like anyone, I mean, we're all gonna, if we hear demons playing in our attic, we're gonna want to think that it's rats first. And when our daughter's acting out, we're gonna want to think that she's sick first. We're not gonna immediately want to go to the possession. But she really took a beating. I mean, you could see the bruising and the cuts and things like that on her face. I mean, she really took a beating, and I think that's a little symbolic because I think she took a beating emotionally. I can't imagine having a child and having to watch it go through things like that, or your child laying there and it not looking like your child, not acting like your child, and having to tie that child to the bed and wrap all of the headboards, footboards, and everything around you. I mean, I just think that would be so traumatizing. But she stuck it in there with her when at that time it was easier for them to just throw somebody away and put them in a psych ward. She stuck it out with her, and she was going to stick it out with her to the end. And I think at the end, whenever she said she doesn't remember any of that, and then the little girl said something to make you believe that she did remember, I think she was trying to protect her mother in a way and try to act like that she didn't remember the things that she had actually gone through, because she knew that her mom had really sacrificed a lot for her. I liked that character as well.
Right, it's insinuated too that this film director and she did have a relationship of some sorts. So even if the guy was innocent and wasn't doing anything to Regan, right, she also lost him, during the film. So that was the extra trauma she went through on top of everything else. Yeah, it's a great.
It was as if she didn't. Sorry about that.
No, of course.
It was as if she didn't even get time to mourn, with him. That it was just she was so caught up in her daughter that she wasn't even able to mourn. And obviously they were more than friends, because in the beginning the little girl says, "Why aren't you going to marry him?" And I think that's just, it's sad that she couldn't even deal with the things that she needed to deal with, the issues at work and all of that. She was just so concentrated and focused on her daughter. My internet's behind a little bit, Dr. Yeager. I'm not trying to be rude and interrupt you.
No, you guys know you can interrupt me anytime. I don't care. Right, so
I was intrigued by one of Regan's questions. I liked them all. This one says, do you think the more experienced father was killed by the demon and not Damien? Man, that opens up a real can of worms for me, because if these two fathers are in the will of God trying to exorcise this demon, certainly God would have some say-so. I know there's a lot of ifs here, but God would have a lot of say-so when this senior father died. Perhaps it was his time to go so that Damien could be fulfilled back to his faith and, give himself a kind of a ransom for this girl. I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but when you're dealing with the spiritual world, you can't say, well, there's demons, but there's no God. You can't say there's no good to this evil. So I think it opens up another, all kinds of questions that can come to us. So I personally think that the father died of a heart attack or whatever it was, and he's out of the way now. Damien is really alone, and he has to take drastic measures, because we saw that this demon was not eager to come out of her. So what did he do? He gave his life that she could be free. So I know that sounds a little complicated, but
no, with Father Marin, we actually get at the beginning of the film when he's in Iraq, right? We have this whole like backstory almost with him and this one particular demon seem to know each other. Like right before the exorcism scene, Regan's sitting there like, "I'm waiting for you, Father Marin." Right?
yeah,
Right.
that's right. And I guess that was nitroglycerin tablets he was taking. I don't know what he was taking in that little box, but it kind of preserved him till he got to the final battle.
Well, they did mention that the last exorcism that he had a part of, that he had pulled himself away because the last one was, I guess, traumatic, or I forget the word that they actually used. But maybe it was a meetup and a matchup with that demon, and then Harriet came back. And I mean, did she summon this demon because of the Ouija board, or was it just already in the house and she just opened herself up to it due to the Ouija board? Like, I don't know.
There was a coin too, a coin from Iraq that she had.
Yes,
that might have played a part in her possession.
and that stuff was buried. And the first thing that I thought about, like whenever they were doing that dig and that stuff was buried, the first thing that I thought about was, there was I'm gonna tell stories on myself again. That I had a wart on my knee that would not go away as a child. Okay, would not go away. I had it burn off, froze off, blah 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 blah. Dad worked this guy. He was the seventh son of the seventh son. Told Dad to tell me to rub that bean on it, say this little quote that I still remember to this day, and then you throw it away for it to be buried, to get rid of it. And then once it was gone, then that would go away. And it did, and it never came back, never a scar or anything. And there's a lot of rituals like that to help, or in those types of instances, you're going to, if it's an actual object, you're going to bury it or burn it or something like that. So maybe that's why those objects were buried, because someone was trying to get away from them and trying to protect themselves from them. I don't know. I just kind of thought about that whenever I seen that scene.
Yeah, it's an interesting scene. You start the movie out, and that lasts a good 10 minutes or so, that scene. So it's clearly there for a reason. Well, that's the only time we see the Marin before the final scene. But the excavation thing you just mentioned, Crystal, is really, really interesting. We gotta spend at least a few minutes here too talking about the exorcism scene, right? This is the climax. This is when everything comes together, right? So you guys tell me, what are some film techniques that are being used to amplify this scene, like to really draw out the scares or the shock value? What's going on in that final scene with the exorcism? What types of camera movements and stuff did you notice, if any?
I remember that.
I seen someone.
Go ahead, ladies, before old men.
No, I was just I forget whose posted it was. It might have been Kirsten's, where she had done some research on what was going on there. And she thought it was a mannequin head that was, spinning around. And it went into detail about what they done and how they used the wallet as the sound of that. And, it would go close up and then it would kind of pan back out. And I thought that was interesting, the things that she had put on there, because I hadn't known about that before.
And toward the end of the movie, right before that, the father falls out, just pushes himself out the window, I suppose how it happened. I noticed that the camera gets in so close and it shows his eyes changing color into the color of the demon's eyes. So that camera, that opens the door for us, that the camera is saying a lot without saying a word. He's saying that demon has passed from one individual to the next, which opens us up to more questions and being more inquisitive about this father. That's how I got my idea that he sacrificed himself. He knew what he was doing. And so I think the camera shot there is very important. It just brings about a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Some of the close-ups of his face during the actual ceremony too, of Father Karras's face, like just seeing his skepticism turn to faith, like without even having to say anything. Those were some really cool close-up shots during that scene too, I thought, to go along with your point about the close-up of his eyes.
Yeah, yes, and this Father Marion, the camera would work on his face so often, and it would almost like our other priest, Harris, was absorbing what he was doing, and the camera showed that back and forth constantly. You'd see one father that had faith. He was reading from scripture. Faith comes by hearing by the word of God. So he's hearing these things. And the younger father it's almost as though he's absorbing that inner faith of the older father. And it's almost like that's what the whole story was about. This younger father finding his redemption finally. But the camera did all that. I mean, he was just reading from scripture like any of us could, but the scene, the mezzanine scene, that's what brings back to us, the audience. We're seeing, we're seeing what the director wanted us to see. That was the underlining inward voices that comes only from a camera.
The sound.
Iconic shot. Go ahead.
I was going to say the soundtrack is very grating in the scene too. All the noises she makes, she's speaking other languages, just moaning and groaning that she does. It's interesting. There's no really suspenseful music during the scene. It's all that kind of stuff. But
There's hardly a score in this, honestly.
Yeah,
there's hardly any music in it other than the theme at the beginning and the end. My bad. Go ahead.
Yeah, that theme is really iconic. You guys have probably heard that somewhere before. I saw it on a used car commercial. They play that theme song.
And when they tape her at one time, and I hope I'm not getting my movies mixed up, but they tape her at one time, and when they play it back, one of the fathers, I think the younger one, said it's some kind of language, because that's how you're going to prove that it's demon. The demon will speak more than one language. But the guy that is with him in the recording says, no, it's English, just backwards. Y'all remember that, or did I dream that?
You're right.
Okay. I thought that was not, then I wondered about that. Was it really backward, or was it another language? I don't know. Or was somebody trying to cover this up?
I think they were insinuating that they were still kind of insinuating she wasn't possessed, because she wasn't speaking Latin or Greek or something. She was still speaking English, but it was backwards.
Well, they spoke Latin like 3 minutes before that, though. They had a back and forth in Latin or French or whatever. It wasn't English, and it wasn't English backwards.
And I think he alluded to that. He said, that's Latin. I think the younger priest said, that's Latin. So I think that's when he was convinced that it was definitely a demon. She was definitely demon possessed.
I think it's interesting where he asks her to move the nightstand, and the demon says that would be too far a vulgar use of my powers or whatever. I thought that was cool. Russell says, remember when it was a thing that people would play records backwards for subliminal demonic messages? Yeah.
Yes.
Heavy metal albums.
Yeah. Even the Beatles. What about Lee J. Cobb in this movie? Well, he was the detective or something, right? I mean, he was a big actor during the day. It seemed like he played a little bit of a useless part, but he was one of those guys that was in 12 Angry Men, and he's been in all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, the movie does have some noir elements to it, right? With this character. This character, if you keep watching the franchise, this character comes back again in The Exorcist 3. He's played in that movie by George C. Scott. So if you guys do watch another Exorcist movie, I would recommend Exorcist 3. It's almost like a direct sequel to The Exorcist. Don't watch Exorcist 2. Exorcist 2 is a god awful movie. Unless you want to review it for the upcoming short paper we'll do, where I will give you a sequel or prequel analysis or whatever. Part 2 is terrible. Part 3 is really good though. I also wanted to recommend another exorcism movie if you guys are like to this one. This one's from 2005. It was called The Exorcism of Emily Rose. I would also recommend that one if you haven't seen it. A lot of the themes that we've talked about, science versus religion and all this type of stuff, they definitely play that up in that film too. I think that movie's way scarier than this one by modern standards. Has any of you guys seen it before?
I haven't seen it, but is that the movie where the priest is sued because he did an illegal exorcism or something?
Yes. Yeah, Crystal, you said you've seen it before.
Yeah, that was a true story as well, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it was.
I'm pretty sure that was a true story, and it was very wow. Talking about a thriller suspense movie, that definitely fits, and it seemed real. And I mean, that would just be something so scary to me, to think that someone, or even if I would get possessed by a demon. I mean, I can't imagine, like you've seen people cry out like, help me, but then, the demon's taking over. That's awful. Like the person fighting within themselves.
Yeah, so check that film out if you're so inclined. I would definitely recommend. There's some stuff we didn't even get to cover today. We didn't get to talk about the dream and the subliminal messages and all that type of stuff. That just goes to show you how interesting this film is. It's been an hour and 15 minutes. We didn't even get to talk about everything in it.
Wow. Yeah.
So moving ahead then, our film for Thursday is John Carpenter's The Thing. Okay, John Carpenter's The Thing. Nicole was supposed to present. But John we'll go in more detail about him on Thursday. But this film takes place in Antarctica. And this creature suddenly starts impersonating. You guys will see. I'm not going to spoil it. But one of the questions to ask yourself when you watch this film, keep this in the back of your mind as you watch it. Who is this creature at any given moment, right? Like at any given moment, this creature could be anybody, right? So who is it? So that's something to keep in the back of your pocket as you watch this next film. It's a very much a body snatcher type of film. Yeah, I will be interested to hear what you guys have to say about that one. This one's my favorite. I love the thing. Yeah, so that should be it for today then. Great job, Reagan, on your
Thank you, Reagan.
All right. So
Thank you.
we'll see you guys next time.
Goodbye, everybody.